I was 16 when my life took a turn I never saw coming. My mom remarried 2 years ago, and with her new husband, Robert, came his son, Ethan. Overnight, I had a stepdad and a stepbrother, two people I didn't ask for but now had to share my life with. Robert was nice enough, but he wasn't my dad, and he didn't try to be. He kept his distance emotionally, offering only surface-level advice and the occasional pat on the back when I did something manly like mowing the lawn. Ethan, on the other hand, was my age but couldn't have been more different. Ethan was everything I wasn't: athletic, charming, and annoyingly good at fitting into any situation. While I preferred the quiet of my room with my sketchbook, Ethan was out making friends, playing sports, and winning over every adult he met. Robert beamed with pride every time Ethan accomplished something, which only made me feel like an outsider in my own home. The tension between Ethan and me started almost immediately. He had this habit of treating me like a joke, making sly comments about my art or the fact that I wasn't into sports. At first, I brushed it off, but over time, the digs started to sting. It didn't help that Robert seemed to favor Ethan in everything. Family dinners were a constant reminder that I was the odd one out, with conversations revolving around Ethan's latest triumphs. Things came to a head one afternoon when Ethan stumbled upon something he shouldn't have. I had a small sketchbook that I kept hidden under my bed, a collection of drawings and journal entries that I poured my heart into. It was my sanctuary, a place where I could express thoughts and feelings I couldn't share with anyone else. One day, I came home from school to find Ethan sitting on my bed, flipping through my sketchbook. My heart dropped. "What are you doing?" I demanded, snatching the book out of his hands. Ethan grinned, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Relax, I was just curious. You're pretty good at drawing, you know." "Don't touch my stuff," I snapped, shoving the sketchbook into my backpack. He stood up, towering over me just slightly. "Chill, I'm not going to steal your precious art." But he paused, smirking. "Some of those journal entries? Interesting stuff. Didn't know you felt that way about certain people." I froze. My face burned as I realized what he was implying. Buried in that sketchbook were a few entries about my struggles with my identity, things I wasn't ready to share with anyone, least of all my stepbrother. "Ethan, I swear, if you say anything—" "Oh, I'm not saying anything," he said, raising his hands in mock innocence. "But Robert might find it enlightening. Don't you think?" "You wouldn't?" He shrugged, his smirk widening. "Depends. Maybe you should start being nicer to me. You know, stop being such a buzzkill all the time." I clenched my fists, anger and humiliation bubbling inside me. "This isn't a game, Ethan. Don't you dare tell him." "Relax," he said, patting me on the shoulder as he walked past. "Your secret's safe with me. For now." That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with the implications of what Ethan had found and what he might do with it. The house felt colder than usual, the walls closing in as I imagined Robert's face if he ever found out. Would he be disappointed? Angry? Would he kick me out? Ethan had always been a thorn in my side, but now he had power over me and he knew it. It was no longer just sibling rivalry, it was something much darker. The secret he held in his hands had the potential to shatter the fragile balance in our family, and I had no idea how to stop him. Dinner that evening was unusually quiet. Mom had made her famous pot roast, and the smell filled the house, but the air at the table was thick with tension. Ethan sat across from me, a smug grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. He'd been teasing me with veiled remarks all week, dropping little hints about my sketchbook when Robert or Mom were within earshot. "So," Ethan started, spearing a piece of roast with his fork, "I found something interesting the other day." I stiffened, my fork pausing midair. "What's that?" Robert asked, taking a sip of his drink. "Oh, just something in Sam's room," Ethan said, his tone casual but his eyes locked on me. My heart sank. "Don't," I muttered under my breath, barely audible. Ethan ignored me. "It's this sketchbook," he continued. "Sam's pretty talented, actually. But there's more than just drawings in there. Like, journal entries, Mom's brows furrowed. Ethan, why were you going through Sam's things? I wasn't going through them, Ethan said quickly, feigning innocence. It was just lying there, open. Couldn't help but notice. Robert set his glass down. What kind of entries? He asked, his voice low and serious. It's personal, I snapped, glaring at Ethan. You had no right. Well, Ethan interrupted, leaning back in his chair with a smirk. Some of it's about people in the house. You, for example, Robert? The room went silent. My mom looked at me, confusion and concern etched on her face. Ethan, she said firmly, I don't think this is appropriate. But Robert held up a hand, his eyes now fixed on me. Sam, is there something I need to know? I swallowed hard, my palms sweating. It's nothing, I stammered. Just thoughts I wrote down. Private thoughts. Private thoughts? Ethan repeated, his voice dripping with mockery. Like how you feel out of place here. Or how you think Robert favors me over you. That kind of private. It's enough, my mom snapped. But the damage was done. Robert's expression shifted, his jaw tightening. Is that true, Sam? I hesitated, my chest tight with fear and shame. It's not like that. I was just venting. It doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything? Robert repeated, his voice rising. So you've been sitting in your room, writing about how much you resent me? And this house? Instead of coming to me like an adult. I didn't mean for anyone to see it. I shot back, my voice cracking. It's not fair that Ethan. This isn't about Ethan. Robert interrupted, slamming his hand on the table. This is about you and how you clearly don't respect me as your stepfather. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. You don't understand, I said, my voice trembling. It's not about respect. It's complicated. Complicated? Robert scoffed, shaking his head. What's complicated about living under this roof, eating the food I provide, and still finding the time to write about how much you hate me? I don't hate you. I yelled, standing up. I just feel invisible. You're always praising Ethan, always putting him on a pedestal, and I'm just here. Maybe if you acted more like Ethan, Robert started, but Mom cut him off. Robert, stop, she said, her voice firm. You're not helping. Helping? Robert turned to her, his face red with frustration. How am I supposed to help when my own stepson is keeping secrets and resenting me in silence? You're not listening to him, Mom argued. This isn't about you, it's about how he feels. Ethan, who had been sitting quietly for a moment, decided to chime in. Maybe if Sam wasn't so sensitive, this wouldn't be such a big deal. Are you serious right now? I snapped, glaring at him. You're the one who started this. You had no right to read my journal, let alone share it. I didn't share anything you didn't already write, Ethan shot back. Maybe you should own up to your feelings instead of hiding behind a sketchbook? That's enough. Mom yelled, her voice silencing the room. She turned to Ethan. You had no business reading Sam's journal, let alone bringing it up like this. Do you have any idea what you've done? Ethan rolled his eyes but stayed quiet. And you, she said, turning to Robert, need to stop treating this like an attack on you. Sam is a teenager. He's figuring things out, and he needs support, not judgment. Robert pinched the bridge of his nose, exhaling sharply. Fine, he said. But this doesn't change the fact that trust has been broken here. Sam, you need to start being honest with us. This kind of behavior can't happen again. I wanted to scream, to tell them all how wrong they were, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I stormed out of the room, my appetite gone and my heart heavy. As I climbed the stairs to my room, I heard Mom's voice trailing behind me, trying to smooth things over with Robert. Ethan didn't say another word, but I could feel his smug satisfaction radiating from across the table. In that moment, I realized the damage wasn't just about the secret anymore. It was about trust, betrayal, and the cracks in a family that had never truly been whole. The days after the dinner confrontation felt like walking through a minefield. I avoided the kitchen, skipped meals, and spent most of my time locked in my room. The house, once chaotic with family noise, was now eerily quiet. Mom tried to keep the peace, but I could hear the tension in her voice whenever she spoke to Robert. Robert, for his part, kept his distance. When we did cross paths, he gave me a curt nod or a muttered morning. The warmth that used to exist, however faint, was gone, replaced by an awkwardness that made my stomach churn. Ethan, on the other hand, seemed unfazed. He went about his days as though nothing had happened, flashing his usual smug grin whenever he saw me. But I noticed something else in Ethan's behavior, moments of hesitation, a flicker of guilt in his eyes when he thought no one was looking. It wasn't enough to erase the damage, but it was there, gnawing at the edges of his confidence. One afternoon, as I sat sketching aimlessly in my room, there was a knock at the door. Before I could answer, Ethan pushed it open and leaned against the frame. "Hey," he said. "What do you want?" I asked without looking up. He hesitated, then walked in, closing the door behind him. "Look, I didn't mean for things to get this bad." I put my pencil down and glared at him. "You didn't mean for things to get bad? You knew exactly what you were doing, Ethan. You used something personal against me, and now everyone in this house is miserable." He ran a hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable. "Yeah, okay, maybe I screwed up. But you can't just expect to write stuff like that about people and not face consequences." "Consequences?" I snapped. "Those were my private thoughts. You had no right to invade my space, let alone share it with Robert. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was for me?" Ethan looked down, his confidence faltering. I don't know, I thought it would make things better. Like, get everything out in the open?" "Well, congratulations," I said bitterly. "You've succeeded in ruining what little peace we had." Ethan opened his mouth to say something, but the words didn't come. Instead, he turned and left, leaving me alone with my anger. Later that evening, Robert knocked on my door. I hesitated, but eventually muttered, "Come in." He stepped inside, his expression a mix of frustration and weariness. "We need to talk," he said. I sighed, bracing myself. "Fine." Robert sat down on the edge of my bed, his hands clasped together. "Sam, I want to apologize for how I reacted the other night. I shouldn't have raised my voice or jumped to conclusions. But I need you to understand that trust is a big deal for me. Finding out how you felt, it caught me off guard." I looked at him, my guard still up. "I didn't mean for you to see that. Those were my private thoughts, not some declaration of how I feel about you all the time." He nodded slowly. "I get that. But I need to know if there's truth in what you wrote. Do you really feel like I favor Ethan? That you don't belong here?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, sometimes. It's like, no matter what I do, Ethan's the one you notice. I'm just here in the background." Robert sighed, his shoulders slumping. "I never meant to make you feel that way. I guess I've been trying so hard to connect with Ethan that I didn't realize I was neglecting you. That's on me." His honesty caught me off guard. For the first time, I saw not just a stepdad but a man trying to navigate a complicated family dynamic. "I don't hate you," I said quietly. I want to feel like I matter too." "You do," Robert said firmly. "And I'll do better to show that. But you've got to meet me halfway, Sam. I need you to talk to me, not bottle things up. Can we try that?" I nodded, my chest feeling a little lighter. "Yeah, I can try." The next day, I confronted Ethan one last time. I found him in the living room, scrolling through his phone. "We need to talk," I said, crossing my arms. He sighed, setting his phone down. "What now?" "I want to know why you did it," I said, my voice steady. "Why go through my stuff? Why tell Robert?" Ethan looked uncomfortable but didn't look away. "I guess I was jealous," he admitted. "Jealous? Of what?" "You," he said simply. "You're not afraid to be yourself, even when it's hard. I've spent my whole life trying to impress people, and you don't do that." It pissed me off. I blinked, taken aback. "That doesn't make it okay." "I know," he said, meeting my eyes. "I messed up. I'm sorry, Sam. Really? For the first time, I believed him. We didn't hug or have some big emotional moment, but something shifted. The walls between us weren't gone, but they weren't as high anymore. That night, I sat in my room, sketchbook in hand, reflecting on everything. Family isn't perfect, it's messy and painful, but it's also worth fighting for. Forgiveness wasn't easy, but it was the only way forward. As I sketched, I realized I wasn't drawing out of anger anymore. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could figure this out together.